far as dream school goes, we're going to back up just a little bit. I think that every student should apply to somewhere between 5 and 12 schools. Now, generally, I say 8 to 12 schools. But if you have a very specific idea as to where it is that you want to go, then you can get away with 5 schools. As far as dream schools go, I think everyone should have at least 2 on your list. It is easier to live with the knowledge that you didn't get in rather than the not knowing as to whether or not you could have gotten in. Now, I also have to take into account that the application fees are not free. Sometimes those can be challenging. So when you have a large list, and I like to actually start out with kids having a list of like 30 schools. You know, it's basically tell me every school you even heard of. We start from there. Now I want from that student 3 reasons why you want to go to this school. And they have to be good reasons. Please don't tell me because your friends are going there or because, oh, my aunt's sister's cousin's daughter told me that it was a fantastic school. That's not a good reason. Does it fit academically? Does it fit financially? Does it fit culturally? Does it fit for the location? So there are about 4 things, those are the 4, that I generally like to talk about. I think once we get to those items, does it fit academically? Does it have your major? Does it fit financially? Can you afford to go? Do you need a lot of financial aid or just some financial aid? Does it fit culturally? So are you looking at being one of a very small minority, or are you looking at being somewhere in the middle, or are you being part of the majority? And then the last one is location, which goes back to how far away from home are you comfortable being? So that's how I would start with narrowing down that list. So when there are students who have colleges on their list that are seemingly out of reach, and they're only out of reach because of statistics, right? So we can find statistics and compare the current students' grades, test scores, etc., with those of the students who have been accepted to that school. So I let the data speak for itself. So there's a common data set that's put together by every single school. You can go to that common data set and it will tell you from last year's class what the average GPA was, what the average test score was, how many people submitted tests, and which tests they submitted. So if we look at someone and they come to me and they have a 2.8 GPA, and they are not going to take an SAT or an ACT, and on their list, they have decided that Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and Dartmouth are their top 4 schools, I'm going to look at the common data set, and I'm going to print out each one, and I will show that to the student and say, this is the metrics of the students who were accepted. As you can see, you have a long way to go. Now, if I'm talking to a sophomore or a freshman, well, then we can decide which classes we want to take in order to get the best grades and to get the largest increase in our GPA, if that's what we want to do. If, however, I'm speaking with a junior or a senior, the hard work has already been put in. So we then need to refigure what our list is going to be. We have to be realistic. And I think that's what my job is, right? My job is to keep the students realistic. So again, if you come to me and you have a 2.5 GPA and you're looking at all Ivy League schools and you're looking at Duke University and Stanford University, then maybe we need to have a meeting where we discuss what is more appropriate for you. Oftentimes I will see the opposite. I will see kids who have a 3.8, a 3.75, and they're going to be listing schools that are larger state schools that they can get in easily. So I said, well, don't you have something that you want to reach for? So in that case, then we have to reconfigure their list by adding some schools that will be a little bit more towards the challenge of getting in. One of the things that happens, of course, is at the end of that process, what happens when they get rejected? It happens to everybody. That's the first thing I tell them. It happens to everyone. There are very few people nowadays, with the proliferation of technology, you can put out 20 applications. So somebody somewhere is going to tell you no. And that has to be okay. Understand that they said no for some reason. They didn't think that you were a fit for their school. They didn't say that you were a bad person. They didn't say they didn't like you in general. They didn't say anything about you. Your skill set just was not a fit for the school, but you will never know why. And that's the hard part. The hard part is the not knowing. So I think a lot of times when you are rejected from a school, you have to understand that it's not personal. As much as you may want to go to that school, it's not a fit. If they say it's not a fit, please don't push the envelope and try and find a way to get in. They believe and they know because they're looking at thousands of applications. So if they say no, it's okay. You move on and you look and you wait for the next decision to come down, because you will find the best place for you, without a doubt. The school that you go to will be the best one for you. Demonstrated interest will matter for some schools and will not matter for others. I think the larger schools get, the less demonstrated interest makes a difference. So for example, the University of Virginia, they had this year in excess of, I think, 50,000 applications. So they're not going to see every single student that went to their website, asked for an interview, sent in an email, had a question, interacted on Facebook or Instagram. That's not going to happen. But if you look at a smaller school, I think the smaller private liberal arts institutions, Hamilton College, Ripon College, Coe College in Iowa, the Pomona College out in California, these are the schools, I think, where you really have an opportunity to make a mark. So again, you demonstrate interest by going to the website. You demonstrate interest by setting up interviews, both formal and informal. If you ask for one, generally they will give you one. I actually set up an interview with a young lady for Hamilton College because I found out that the representative from the school was coming to the area. Now, the representative wasn't going to this particular young lady's high school, but she would be in the area. So I reached out, and it was a couple of months in advance, and was able to set up a time where they could just meet at a Starbucks. And it works out very well. So the student got to talk to the admissions office. The admissions office had the interview. They know who she is. And they suggested that she actually have another meeting, but this one be more formal. So she would go through a different process and meet with someone else. So that was the opportunity for her to speak with two different people. So demonstrated interest, I think smaller schools, it is extremely important. Larger schools, not as important.